Now to tackle the situation in the Middle East and also how is the Middle East portrayed in cinema, we're joined by academic researcher and author Dr. Reza John Vedadi, live from Oman. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Vedadi. Now, as someone who has spent over a decade studying how Western media portray Muslim and Iranian identity, how is the current Iran-US conflict being shaped in Western public perception?
If we go back to 1979, when the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran, the United States presented Iran, along with many other countries in the East, not just Iran, but Afghanistan, Palestine, Iraq, Arab countries, in general, in an Orientalist mode. And you would only have to look at Edward Said and the book Orientalism that he wrote, which was groundbreaking, that demonstrated that the West, so United States and Europeans, look down on the people from the East, not just Iranians. And they always had a negative and disrespectful representation of them, not just in Hollywood, but all across media and academia.
Mm-hmm. So you've written about Iran negotiating from a position of strength built maybe on regional alliances and resilience rather than weakness. Do you see that framing holding up given the recent strikes and Gulf spillover?
So it's interesting because if you look at the way the news describes Iran, this specifically because Iran is the main country that is at war with the United States, or the United States is at war with Iran, is that sometimes you see the news, for example, depict Iran as a country that is in chaos, and with the small push from US military or political elites, the people will come out and revolt against the leaders, and a new revolution will happen and a new government will come to power, regime change. But then in the same news, maybe the next day or even the same day, you see that they describe Iran as a great threat, not just to the region, but to possible countries in Europe and even the United States. So the West wants to portray Iran through its media and through its political discourse as a country that is weak and is about to be toppled, and also strong at the same time and is a threat. And both of them work on the audience that watch the legacy media, because the audience that watch legacy media in the West, they're not very critical. They don't look at the news and criticize what the news is trying to propagate to them, even if it's from the West. They take it on and accept it as it is. Many people have changed. They watch, for example, maybe your channel, they watch Press TV, RT, maybe different podcasts on YouTube, and have learned to criticize what the news from legacy media teaches them.
But do you think news are as strong as cinema?
Definitely. The whole society is created by the information that is fed to its audience. So news, newspapers, TV, radio, even songs, they affect their culture. You look at academia, the people who are in charge of how the children or even adults in university are educated and what they think, they have a massive influence. And Hollywood cinema is a reflection of all of these other medias and brings them all together to depict societies, be they Asian, African, South American, or Europeans.
So now, can maybe productions in the Middle East, notably from Iran, counter that image and give the Middle Eastern or the Iranian perception of the situation on the ground?
So in Iran, along with many other countries such as India and China and America and European countries, is famous for its cinema output. Iran is famous for its cinema in artistic depictions that it has created in the last 30, 40 years, winning awards. But what has become very interesting is since the imposed war from February, March onwards, a new kind of genre of short films, the Lego films, if you have heard of them, they have become very popular in helping to counter the US narrative, the anti-Iran narrative, by depicting the narrative of how the Iranians and how people across the world see the United States, using the same mediums and language used within their own popular culture in the United States. So the Lego movies have taken this language of expressing ideas and narrative and put in the Eastern view of what's happening in news and current affairs, and is sending it back to the Western audience. And many in the Western audiences are watching and actually benefiting and enjoying this kind of representation of the world through Lego and alternative narratives.
So you think the perception started changing already, and maybe it's hard now for the Western media to counter that because so many people, even in the United States, are against the current war waged by the United States and Israel on Iran?
Well, the citizens in the United States predominantly have when there's been polls have demonstrated they're against the war. But what happens is you have the citizens, but then you have the people in political power, such as the Congress and the Senate and the White House. These people, there's a strong lobby from the Zionist side that promotes the narrative and also promotes the points that the Zionists want to achieve. And that one of them is war against Iran or the weakening of Iran with sanctions, war, and other means. So even the majority of the citizens of the United States are against this war. Unfortunately, majority of the politicians who have been elected into power, and this is starting to break down. You start to see politicians who are starting to not take Zionist lobby money and become more independent because they've realized that the base, the grassroots, are becoming anti-war and anti this narrative of trying to topple governments and attacking governments. So we have to see how the United States pans out. I don't particularly think those who hold the political power will let go easily, but we have to see how far the U.S. citizens are willing to pull or push to try and change the political system in the United States.
Dr. Reza Vedadi, thank you so much for being with us on Asia One.